If you ever wondered what would happen if a stormtrooper actually got hit by something sharp, this list is for you. Today, we're looking at 10 R-rated movies that aren't afraid of blood and grit. Forget the fairy tales. These are the 10 space movies that put the sanitized world of George Lucas to shame. Many fans still hesitate to admit they love Starship Troopers. They worry people will judge their taste. They don't realize the uncommonly attractive yet vapid soldiers, the alien insurgents who are literally bugs, and the cheesy costumes and corny lines are all intentional. This is no guilty pleasure. It is a masterpiece of black comedy that uses graphic imagery to show the reality of a fascist war. The film depicts a world where race and gender equality are finally achieved, but the cost is absolute military control. The United Citizen Federation rules society. Basic rights, like the ability to vote or have children, are not guaranteed. They must be earned through military service. The story follows young citizens sent across the galaxy to fight a species of giant, intelligent arachnids. On the surface, it looks like a simple battle between humans and bugs, but the film is actually a trap for the audience. The movie is packed with wink-wink propaganda videos that feel incredibly obvious today. If the film had been released years later, it likely would have been praised for its bold indictment of imperialism. It took real-life lessons in geopolitics for the general audience to finally catch on. In Galaxy of Terror, the cruiser quest drops into a graveyard of dead ships on the planet Morganthus. The crew is looking for survivors of the crashed starship Ramus, but they only find corpses and a massive, unsettling pyramid. This pyramid is a psychological trap. It turns your worst fears into a very messy reality. This is a Roger Corman production, which usually means the budget was about $20 and a sandwich, but the name in the credits is James Cameron. Before Terminator or Aliens, he was the production designer here, performing miracles with literal garbage. But you probably guessed the film is on this list for a different reason. It has a high splatter quotient. In one scene, a crystal shard breaks off and starts moving under a crew member's skin, driving him to cut off his own arm, only for the severed limb to come crawling back and attack him. Then there is the infamous moment where a woman is stripped and subjected to a rape and murder by a giant alien worm. It's a spectacularly tacky sequence that perfectly captures the dirty side of the 80s, all while George Lucas was busy selling plastic action figures and Yoda puppets. Roger Corman is back, and so are James Cameron's sets, recycled from Galaxy of Terror just a year later. And right away, it's obvious what this movie is doing. Forbidden World wouldn't exist without Alien, which, in its own way, wouldn't exist without Star Wars either. So yeah, this one's not as throwaway as it looks. The action takes place on a desert planet, a largely uninhabited world with only a few human research stations. In one of these labs, a new life form is created to solve world hunger. Instead, it escapes and starts treating the crew like appetizers. Intergalactic troubleshooter Mike Colby and his robot sidekick are sent in to clean up the mess, only to realize the future of food has turned the station into a literal slaughterhouse. It's a gritty checklist of low-budget glory, gratuitous nudity, a nightmare spider hybrid, and bodies melting into slimy ooze. The gore was so relentless, it originally earned the film an X rating. Say what you want, but the people behind this knew how to entertain. Released in 1981, Heavy Metal feels like a rock album cover brought to life. Or maybe a concentrated dose of everything parents were worried about in the 80s: sex, violence, skeletons, and loud music. It's an animated anthology made up of separate stories that occasionally connect. Some lean into pure sci-fi wish fulfillment and push it to bloody extremes. Others go darker. The B-17 segment dives into undead horror while Captain Stern brings in grotesque mutations and a more twisted kind of action. It has that pulpy, slightly trashy charm that somehow works in its favor. Over the years, it's influenced a lot of animators. One of the more obvious examples is South Park, which even did a full episode, Major Boobage, as a direct homage. In 2000, Pitch Black proved that building a terrifying alien world doesn't require hundreds of millions. With a modest $23 million budget, director David Twohy scorched the image with filters to create a primal survival thriller where the main threat isn't just the monsters, but the hero himself. The setup is lean. A transport ship carrying prisoners crash lands on a remote desert planet. The survivors think they've made it through the worst until they realize a total eclipse is coming, plunging the planet into darkness. Rather than a clean-cut crew of noble rebels, Twohy throws a pack of broken humans into the meat grinder, a morphine-dependent lawman, a runaway girl, and a pilot whose first instinct isn't heroism, but sacrificing the passengers to save herself. At the center of it all is Richard B. Riddick, played by Vin Diesel. He's a convicted killer with surgically enhanced eyes, a literal survival requirement for the hellscape they've landed in. Once the darkness hits, tensions start to fray, and unlikely alliances form as everyone fights to survive and get off the planet. Suspicion runs high until they realize there's a much bigger threat. When the eclipse fully sets in, it leaves them completely exposed. The story didn't end there. The Chronicles of Riddick and Riddick followed, both worth a look. Just make sure you track down the director's cut of Chronicles, unless you want the toned-down version. Often described as high noon in space, Outland takes a classic Western setup and drops it onto a mining colony on Jupiter's moon Io. Sean Connery plays Marshal William O'Neill, a newly assigned lawman who quickly realizes something is very wrong. The miners are overworked, the corporation is untouchable, and a dangerous drug is pushing workers to the edge. When O'Neill starts asking questions, he finds himself alone against a system that would rather get rid of him than fix anything. The film leans into a grounded, industrial look instead of flashy sci-fi spectacle. Metal corridors, harsh lighting, and a constant sense that this place exists only to extract profit and burn people out. It's not perfect, but the core idea works. A lone lawman standing his ground in a place where nobody wants him to win. Connery is reliably charismatic, but the film's secret weapon is Francis Sternhagen as Dr. Lazarus, the colony's sarcastic medic and O'Neill's only real ally. Based on a Philip K. Dick story, Screamers is set on Sirius 6B, a mining colony ruined by war between a corporation and its former workers. To win, the Alliance built the Screamers, small underground robots designed to hunt anything with a heartbeat and shred it to pieces. But the machines don't stay simple for long. They start evolving, and that's where the real nightmare begins. Unlike the cleaner robot uprisings in films like I, Robot, Screamers is much uglier. It's darker, more violent, and leans into the kind of paranoia that makes you question every person or child you see on screen. It didn't exactly win over critics in 1995, but it stayed alive as a cult favorite for a reason. It swaps flashy spectacle for a constant sense of dread and a lot of mechanical saw blades. John Carpenter knows exactly what he's doing. And while Ghosts of Mars never reached the status of Halloween or The Thing, it's still worth revisiting. The film is set in the 22nd century and plays like a sci-fi remix of Assault on Precinct 13. A group of police officers and a dangerous prisoner are forced to team up when a mining colony gets taken over by something far worse than a riot. The workers are possessed by the spirits of Mars's ancient inhabitants, and suddenly it turns into a siege with a very different kind of enemy. The cast is all over the place in the best way. Natasha Henstridge, Jason Statham, Ice Cube. Everyone commits, even when the movie gets a little wild. A lot of critics took it at face value and wrote it off as a messy horror film, but the movie clearly aims for something broader than straight horror. There's action, camp, and a tongue-in-cheek edge running through it, whether people picked up on that or not. Ice Cube, for example, didn't get the joke at all and has been pretty open about not loving the film in retrospect. But if you're in the mood for something loud, campy, and unapologetically weird, Ghosts of Mars delivers. Pandorum opens aboard the Elysium, an interstellar ark sent to colonize a distant planet. Something has gone very wrong. The power is out, most of the crew is dead, and the ship is crawling with mutated creatures. This one slipped under the radar when it came out. Despite starring Dennis Quaid and Ben Foster, it didn't even make back its $33 million budget. Part of the problem was simple. Nobody really knew how to sell it. It's not clean space adventure, and it's not a straightforward horror either. But that's exactly why it works. The film blends sci-fi and horror in a way that feels genuinely claustrophobic. The ship becomes a maze, the creatures are fast and brutal, and there's a constant sense that something is off even before the attacks start. And then there's Pandorum itself, a form of space psychosis that starts eating away at the mind, twisting reality, driving people into paranoia and violence, and threatening to finish the job long before the creatures do.